And the third step is فَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, right? Hit them. Now there are so many contemporary scholars who have, very apologetically rather, tried to translate فَضْرِبُوهُنَّ as walk away, as in ضَرْبًا فِي الْأَرْض, for example, in Surah Al-Muzammil. Or يَضْرِبُونَ فِي الْأَرْض. They are hustling and struggling in the earth, trying to make their living and stuff like that. So go get busy with work and just leave her at home. It doesn't mean that. That's just a completely apologetic, Western-oriented perspective on the ayah, trying to show people, hey, the Quran doesn't say hit them. It does. It does. The third step is فَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, hit them. And I'll tell you inshallah in the course of this khatira what that actually means. Some of you think you know what it means, but I'll tell you what it actually means. Let me go back to what I said in my last khatira about the historical and the social context. Remember what Umar ibn Khattab said after they moved to Medina, the Muhajirin? They basically said, just to refresh our memories, they basically said that, we, the people of Muhajirin, we used to have full control over our wives, and we were a little bit violent. We used to, أهل مكة كانوا ضربين النساء. They used to hit their wives. And that was the norm in Mecca. It was not the norm in Medina. The women of Medina were very honorable, they rejected that. And their families would automatically divorce them from their husbands, if they knew that the husbands are using physical violence with them. But the telling thing that Umar said, is that وَجَعَلَ نِسَاءُ الْمُهَاجِرِينَ يَتَأَدَّبْنَ بِأَدَبِ نِسَاءِ الْأَنصَارِ. Gradually, the women of Muhajirin, they started absorbing all the qualities of the women of Ansar. So gradually, they are refusing to let their husbands lay fingers on them. And to make matters more complicated, the Prophet ﷺ, one of the very first injunctions he imposed on the people of Medina, in the first year of Hijrah, in the hadith, very famous. So this is what Imam Shafi'i says, لا تضربوا إماء الله. Don't hit your wives. Don't hit your wives. وطبعا الصحابة كانوا وقافين عند حدود الله. The companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they would stand where the boundaries are. They would never cross them. It doesn't matter what their cultural expectations are. Rasulullah ﷺ said, don't touch them. We can't touch them. But the hearts are boiling from inside. They went on like this for years. The Muhajirin are accepting it, and the women are getting stronger and stronger, and that's a society that is not balanced. Because they came from one extreme, the pendulum has to swing all the way to the other extreme. So now women are exercising this power and authority over their husbands to the extent that Sahaba came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said, Ya Rasulullah, لَقَدْ زَأَرَتِ النِّسَاءُ فِي الرِّجَالِ. الزَّئِير, the roaring of a lion? Women are roaring in their husbands' faces. The situation has become very sensitive, Prophet of Allah. I don't know what to do with my wife anymore. She's yelling at me constantly and I can't lay a finger on her. And communication is not working. Nothing is working with her. She just wants to have her way. لَقَدْ زَأَرَتِ النِّسَاءُ فِي الرِّجَالِ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And the Prophet ﷺ was being subjected to a tremendous amount of pressure. Now remember, he is now being called a feminist. He's being called that he's giving more leniency to women. He's revolutionizing how society is supposed to treat women. He's talking about, increasing their inheritance and treating them equally. So Rasulullah ﷺ is there, being pressured so much. A couple of years into Hijrah, after Hijrah, like 4th or 5th year, the Prophet ﷺ eventually, just because, again, you have to understand, divorce rates were on the rise in Medina. Because men were not trained to handle their domestic issues with any other means except just yelling at their wives or hitting them. They didn't know. They didn't know better, so they did not have any resources to teach them how to handle the situation. So you know what? أنت طالق. I divorce you. خلاص. So divorce rates are on the rise. Men are extremely upset in Medina, and many of them are complaining to the Prophet ﷺ. So a couple of years into Hijrah, after they have upheld that ruling for a few years, he eventually gave them permission to hit their wives under extreme circumstances. If she's completely out of control, اضربها ضربا غير مبرح. Hit her in a very light way. He was being very apologetic and upset. The Prophet ﷺ said that. Now that same night, That same night, he gave them that ruling in the morning. They say, فَأَتَتْ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ سَبْعُونَ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. 70, of course when they say 70 in the language of the Arabs, they mean so many. It was hundreds. They all came to the Prophet ﷺ, to the masjid, crying, oh, our husbands hit us, our husbands hit us, Ya Rasulullah. Why did you give them permission to do that? And the Prophet ﷺ was like, oh man. And he, of course, was so upset, and he told everyone, لَيْسُ هَؤُلَاءِ بِخِيَارِكُمْ. Whoever did that can never be among the honorable in this community. Whoever did this is a dishonorable man. But you're talking about many men, hundreds of men, that did that to their wives. And it was right then and there. When you have two extremes between don't touch them and the other extreme that says hit them, that's when Surah An-Nisa was revealed in the 7th year of Hijrah. And the ayah carried with it the regulation of the process. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the graduality of the Quran that He uses with other things. I'll talk about this in a second. He uses the same graduality to abolish a bad habit after letting the community try the two extremes. Right? Now, the very first step, hitting is only permissible in situations of nushuz. She disobeys you, her food is bland, she spends way too much time with at her mother's. None of that matters anymore. You can only hit, right, when it's a situation of nushuz, and I explained that. Number 2, you have to go through the 3-step program first. فَعِظُهُنَّ. And you have to try that for weeks, and if it doesn't work, you go on to step number 2. And if that doesn't work, that's when you have the permission to hit. Now some of you might say, okay, that's nice and dandy. But why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still didn't say in the Quran, don't hit your wife? Why is the door still open? And I say to you, it is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala handled all other social illnesses. Fornication, consumption of alcohol, slavery, polygamy, all the practices of jahiliyyah that the Arabs used to practice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abolished them gradually. Take polygamy, for example. It is not that the Quran addressed a society that was monogamous and told people, hey guys, rejoice, you can marry 3 more women. It is the exact opposite. It addressed a society where men were so polygamous that they would have 10, 15, and 20 wives, and they were ordered to divorce most of them and keep a maximum of 4. You have to understand the social context. Otherwise you misread the Quran. Right? When it talked about alcohol, it did not address a sober society. It addressed a society that was consuming alcohol, that was selling it, that was making so much money out of it. So the prohibition was very gradual until it was eventually abolished. Same with slavery. It was the cornerstone of their economy, and it was gradually abolished. Right? So the ayah of hitting women did not address a civilized society that does not lay a finger on women, and then was like, okay, now you guys can start hitting your wives. Oh, okay. Bismillah. It wasn't like that. It was the other way around. We are addressing a society that already hits its women, and we're trying to curb a bad practice by imposing a regulatory process. You follow the letter of the law. But let's even make it more complicated. The Prophet ﷺ said that whoever lays a finger on his wife, aside from a situation of nushuz, will be punished and retribution will be delivered. A woman came to Rasulullah ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, my husband hit me. So he invited him, asked about the situation, investigated it, which is what the qudah, the judges used to do later on after the Prophet passed away. Investigated, and then he ruled, your hitting of her was not justified. It was intense. It was not darban ghayr mubarrih. It wasn't light, as I said. And I'll explain what light actually means, because it is not up to everyone's discretion. And number 2, it was not in a situation of discretion, al-qisas, retribution. And he called upon his wife and he said, your husband is right there. Go slap him the way he slapped you. And all of us, Umar, come over here. We just want you to sit in the room for a second. Right? And the Sahaba just sat, and he asked her to slap her husband because the manner by which he hit her was not according to the ayah. And of course she cried and she refused, and she hugged her husband, and they lived happily ever after. Right? So it has to be in a situation, that's the regulatory process. It has to be in a situation of nushuz, right? Number 2, you have to follow the steps. فَعِظُهُنَّ, admonish, give advice, communicate, articulate. And number 2, you have to do the whole reverse psychology in bed type thing, right? And number 3, you can hit. But if you do that at any other time, under any other justification, the state can punish you. And you can actually go to prison for that. Imam Ibn Hazm said the same thing in his book, Al-Muhalla. Right? لا يحل لرجل أن يضرب امرأته في غير ذات موضع. Except for that موضع, for that situation of nushuz. It is not halal for any man to lay a finger on his wife except when in a state of nushuz. Now some of you might say, okay, what is light hitting? فَضْرِبُهُنَّ ضَرْبًا غَيْرَ مُبَرِّحٍ. The Prophet ﷺ explained that in Hajjatul Wada'. The farewell sermon, okay? All of you, if you've ever read the farewell sermon, all of you have been exposed to the hadith of Jabir ibn Abdullah that was mentioned in Sahih Muslim. That is where the story is. All of us get our story about the farewell sermon from Sahih Muslim fi hadith Jabir ibn Abdullah. Now there is another interesting narration in Tirmidhi. And in that narration, it basically says, the narrator of the hadith says that the Prophet ﷺ kept giving us advice about how we should treat our wives. He kept telling us, فَوَعَظَ فِينَا وَعَظًا شَدِيدًا فِي أَمْرِ النِّسَاءِ ثُمَّ قال إِلَّا أَن يَأْتِينَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيِّنَةٍ. So he kept giving them advice and admonishing them. You have to respect your wives, you have to love them, you can't hit them, you can't do this, you can't do that. And that's, again, that's the last year of the Prophet's life, okay? Until he said, إِلَّا أَن يَأْتِينَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيِّنَةٍ. Until they perform or they have committed a fahisha. Clear, unequivocal fahisha. Now let me ask the lay men and women here. What is your understanding of fahisha? What is fahisha in this context? What must it be? Adultery, right? Most people understand fahisha as adultery. And this is what Imam Shawkani said again, Nailul Awtar, and the rest of the Mufassirin followed him on this as well. إِلَّا أَن يَأْتِينَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيِّنَةٍ فَإِن فَعَلْنَ فَاضْرِبُوهُنَّ ضَرْبًا غَيْرَ مُبَرِّحٍ. And if they do commit zina, subhanallah, if they do commit adultery while married, right? That's when you can hit them ضَرْبًا غَيْرَ مُبَرِّحٍ. Now, Abdullah ibn Abbas wanted to understand, again, what we're trying to understand. Ya Rasulullah, what is ضَرْبًا غَيْرَ مُبَرِّحٍ? What is light hitting? And later on, when asked, he would tell them, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, أن يضربها بالسواك وما شابه. He hits her with a miswak or something similar. Ya Allah. Let me just show you how the Prophet is raising the bar. First, it used to be justified on offenses such as nushuz, right? The Prophet ﷺ upped the bar and he says, no, that's not enough anymore. That's not good enough. Nushuz is not good enough. I am upping the bar and I'm saying it has to be a sexual offense that the wife commits against her husband. And it has to be so clear and unequivocal. And I mean, I want you to think about this. Clear and unequivocal and established means that there are shuhud, there are witnesses. So there's this guy walking on his wife and she's with another man, and there are 4 people sitting on chairs, drinking coffee, witnessing the whole thing, and then they say, yes, we saw everything. And then he takes his miswak and he goes like, do you see how he upped the bar, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? From nushuz, he says, no, it has to be adultery. And that is the only situation where it becomes. So again, you have to go through the steps. فَعِظُهُنَّ وَهْجُرُهُنَّ. And then the third one is hit with a miswak. Some of the sisters might be like, okay, that's just silly. What is the miswak? You know the miswak, if you don't know what the miswak is, it's that little stick that we use to brush our teeth. Think of a pencil, okay, just to make it easier on everyone. Think of a pencil. You just one strike with a pencil like this. Some of the sisters will be like, hey, come on, what's the point? How is that going to change anything? And I say, hitting wives, according to the Quran, is a symbolic gesture of discontent. For a man who wants to keep the marriage together, who is willing to forgive his wife after she has committed adultery for this, because he loves her, because he is willing to forgive her, and he wants to maintain and sustain his family and take care of his children. Which is a rare percentage, I would say, of men that would allow that. Most men, when they see something like this, they would just divorce their wives. Okay? Now there's no place for honor killing in any of this. Do you see it? This is why we keep saying honor killing is murder. And you will stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a murderer on the Day of Judgment. Because the Quran spoke clearly about how to handle sexual offenses in relationships. And it doesn't even talk about daughters. We're just talking about wives. Any other thing is not even mentioned in the Quran. You have no right to use violence with them. The only right that is given is, strike with a pencil if you know unequivocally that your wife has committed zina, right? Now, some of you might say, and let me inshallah conclude with this. Some of you might say, oh, you're saying this is a symbolic gesture. What does it mean really? When the husband strikes his wife with a pencil, I would say what the Prophet ﷺ meant is use a gesture of unhappiness and discontent that is compatible with your society and your culture. And that is how women would basically get hurt and get the idea that what they've done against their husbands is completely unacceptable. And in Arab society, they might respond to that simple gesture. Let me ask you a question. Right here in America, if a woman sees her husband cheating on her, it is perfectly acceptable for her to commit an act of violence against him that society never considers to be domestic abuse. What is that? She give him a good slap on his face. All right? Bam! And then the husband that is a gentleman, respectful, cannot do anything, right? He takes the slap. Right? Now let me ask you, Wallahi al-Azim, because people just keep attacking us. And they keep saying, oh, the Quran sanctions violence against women. Let me ask you, in American society, in a different cultural context, it's okay for a woman that saw her husband cheating on her, it's okay to slap him on the face. But it is not okay for the Muslim man to slap his wife on the face if he saw her cheating on him. How's that? This is the story of hitting women in the Quran, right there. At the end of the day, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns out to have a more civilized and more beautiful code than all those man-made accepted cultural practices. And that's why this is the book of Allah. لو أنزلنا هذا الكتاب على جبل لرأيته خاشعا. If this Quran was revealed on a mountain, the mountain will shake. Why? Because the mountain will be able to see the secrets, the timeless secrets of the Quran, the applicability of the Quran, the consistency of the Quran across cultures, across civilizations. It is not 50 years ago in America, it was okay for the husband to slap his wife. 100 years ago in America, it was perfectly fine for the husband to beat his wife, give her a good beating. Today, it's okay for the wife to slap her husband. 25 years from today, it'll be okay for the children to slap their mothers. Right? We're headed in that direction. And we keep adjusting the way we treat each other based on culture that is arbitrary. But the Quran is consistent. It doesn't matter where you are, what you do, what kind of culture, what kind of circumstances, you follow the letter of the Quran. And it is unfortunate how something so beautiful was manipulated, was twisted over the centuries, right? Despite the consensus of the scholars that men are not supposed to hit their wives. Considering the ayah itself, it is just so unfortunate to see. You think any man that understands that would ever lay a finger on his wife? That's the guidance of the Quran that was lost. That's the guidance of the Quran that was lost. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that every single one of you will become an ambassador of peace and take this strongly, unapologetically, and swiftly, and share this with courage with everyone out there. You can never be apologetic about the teachings of the Quran, because in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate good. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase our knowledge of His deen. I ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to establish us with firmness on His path. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to make the best decisions and choices possible under the most difficult of circumstances.